Hamakavi Barzel presents Rabbi Nachum Shifren, Torah scholar, author, public speaker, and good friend of the late Rabbi Meir Kahana.
Shavua Tov, l'kol ha'maazinim. A good week to everybody. Hope everybody had a good Shabbat, a good weekend, restful, etc. You know, it's funny. I'm just looking at the screen right now. I don't know if you can see it, but it looks like I'm in an interrogation room of sorts with this light. It's terrible light, but that won't stop us, right? Anyway, hope all is well. Hope everybody's doing great. A lot of stuff going on. Before we talk about the Parsha, I would like to talk to you about a interesting conversation I had with a gentleman, not Jewish, but kind of a friend. And we started talking philosophically about theology and whatnot. And the subject of Gaza came up, and how to handle it and this and that. And I said, stop right there. Let's go back. Let's look at what history tells us about war. First of all, we've talked about this on this podcast before, and everybody knows, or some of you should for sure know, there's a Parsha, Torah portion. We read the Torah every week, as we all know, and one of the portions is called Ki Tetzeh, and it literally means when you go to war. And the first phrase of that Parsha, of that Torah portion, says, when you go to war against your enemy. Like a lot of things in Judaism, everything has a protocol. Do this, don't do that, do this, do that. That's why if you think that Jews are crazy, you're probably right. We're not normal. There's no question about it. Anybody that would accept the Torah from Mount Sinai, it's got to have a few screws loose. Now I say that, a little pejoratively, but I'm just kidding. Well, my point is, this is definitely not normal behavior. And the DNA of a Jew, as anybody that knows the Torah will tell you, is not normal compared to the rest of humanity. How would you like to sit at home Friday night, not go out to a show, not being able to have a cheeseburger, that sort of thing, right? A little bit dull, actually. But this is one of the things that people are confronted with. It's called Judaism 101. Everybody's confronted with these things. It's called a cultural war, and we are in it just by observing the mitzvot, the commandments that God's given to the Jewish people. You're automatically going to be separated from people. Now, I happen to have many, many people, especially people that are athletes, watermen, paddleboarders, surfers, all that sort of thing. A lot of people know me. They respect me for my beliefs and that sort of thing. However, if you're just starting out on this program, it's a little bit shaky, no question about it. It calls to your inner self and your inner strength of being able to bear, as it were, this yoke. It's not a yoke for me, for everybody I know. I mean, it's, if you go to the store, almost everything turns out to be kosher. That's not an issue anymore. So anyway, philosophically, I had this conversation with this gentleman, and inevitably it goes back to, again, this is a cultural phenomena that is the modern world, or I should say the Western world, has virtually nothing in common with Judaism, except for, you might say, the Ten Commandments. That's another subject for another day, but he was talking to me about the bombing and Gaza and this and that. And I said to him, the first phrase in that Torah portion, Ki Tetzeh le'milchama, when you go to war against your enemy, immediately the person that's aware of what's going on is going to think, wait a minute, this is bizarre. Why is the Torah telling me that here's the protocol about going to war against your enemy? Why would I be going to war with my friend, for example, right? So that's exactly what Rashi, our number one commentator of the Torah, questions. And he says with a little bit of hyperbole and a question mark, you mean you're going to go to war against your friend? And then he immediately responds, No. When you go to war against your enemy, treat him like an enemy, or else don't go to war. War is, as it says in Ecclesiastes, and I mentioned it on this podcast, anybody that went through the 60s know that famous rock band called The Byrds, by the way, spelled with a Y, not an I. And one of their songs was called Turn, Turn, Turn. Everybody, many people know about that song. It was a big hit, and it was taken from the book of Ecclesiastes. And the main thing in that main theme that ran through that song was there's a time and place for everything under heaven. A time for war and a time for peace. What does that mean? The Torah goes on to tell us when it's peace, there's no war. There's a vignette in the Torah. Actually, it's in the prophets. That's PH, not F. And King Solomon talks about a time of peace. The peace was so great that a person would sit under their fig tree and, gaze off at the Judean hills and the beautiful orchards of grapes and dates and figs and whatnot. Olives, of course. Olives are all over the place. And you would gaze out and you would feel this awesome sense of peace. That's peace. During that time, there was no enemies because the world remembered what happened to the Egyptians when they tried to go against the Jewish people. They didn't want that to happen to them. So for a while, there was a tremendous peace. It was just satiated with peace. But that's peace. When there's war, there's no playing around. There certainly isn't giving diapers to your enemy, allowing medicine to go in, allowing gasoline to go in, allowing palletfuls of beans and rice and whatnot. That's not war. I always talk about, in conjunction with what we just mentioned here, during World War II, most people that are going to watch this are too young to remember that, or even the history thereof. And this is a problem when you forget your history, you're doomed to repeat it. Remember that? So when the Allies were doing carpet bombing, Berlin, Bremenhaven, Bremen Harbor, Berlin, Leipzig, Dresden, they bombed the hell out of those places. The Germans were looking around for scraps of breadcrumbs out of the bombed apartments and homes. And the question then was asked as well, not everybody was a Nazi back then. Guess what? We didn't have time to interview the German people to find out who hates Jews and who doesn't hate Jews, who is for Hitler and who isn't for Hitler. Fact is that Hitler was voted by the German people. Just as the Hamas was supported by 85% of the Gazans. 85% voted for them. They knew what the protocol was. They knew what their slate was. It was to destroy Israel and to destroy the Jewish people. Question is why would you, knowing that they want to destroy you and murder you, why would you be giving them diapers, baby formula, Wipies, Advil? It's absurd the way that thing was conducted. October 8th should have been a truce, a ceasefire, because they didn't have any water, no food, no gasoline, nothing. There should have been a moratorium. There should have been a blockade. I think that what I'm saying now sounds a little bit harsh, a little hard line for a lot of people, but that's war. That's called war. Recently, I was privy to somebody sent me an email, a video, saying that there's starvation now in the land of Israel. 30% of the agricultural land in the Galilee is now inaccessible due to the fact that farmers are afraid to get rocketed while they're plowing their fields, etc. This is completely unacceptable. The same thing applies. it's hard to imagine that a people that for 2,000 years were exiled, trampled upon, murdered, 20 different types of murder, children, old, adults, gassed, trampled to death by the sword during the Crusades. Where's our memory? I don't get it. This is a people that haven't learned or don't want to learn from history. Is it really, really asking too much to think about Jewish lives, Jewish children that were slaughtered, that were burned to death, like in ovens? That shouldn't arouse in us some sort of feeling of revenge. If you're a normal person, it would. But again, we're not normal, so there you go. One of the things that we saw in this last Parashat, very interesting thing. If you know anything about the human language, you know the word tameh, tet mem aleph. The word tameh means impure. Now, the Torah doesn't like to use, words that are not proper, words that are vulgar, for example. Instead of saying something is, stinks or something's rotten or something's, just terrible, they use pure and impure. So impure is all the things that are cockroaches, lizards, all the things that we shouldn't be eating, right? Interesting that they meant in the Torah, that at the very end of this week's Parsha, it talks about what happens when a person would ingest those kind of foods. It's actually quite horrific and quite profound. The Torah goes at great lengths to say that this is something that affects the soul, the way we think, the way we act. At some point, there's a disconnect between the Torah, God, and the Jew, when the Jew is eating creeping and crawling bugs, lizards, snakes, stuff like that. Now, other people might be able to do that. The Jews are not allowed to do that. They shouldn't do that. Some people do, but there are ramifications. And the Torah mentions that the word that he uses, nitmetem, the word again, tameh, nitmetem, but it's spelled without the aleph. Those of you that are not so keen on the Hebrew alphabet won't be so keen to notice the difference. It's a nuance. But nitmetem in the Torah is spelled without the aleph, so that the word would be tet mem, right? And that means that's a different word. The Torah does that on purpose, using the same sound, but nitmetem instead of tameh. Nitmetem in this way becomes sealed off or blocked off, or what else could I say? Shut off. The tamtem in Hebrew means to make, what's the word? Impermeable, something that's closed off, meaning that the divine forces of spirituality, of holiness, of this idea of feeling a connection with spirituality is blocked off from those foods because of the foods that we eat. So just a little mention of that. There's an interesting midrash. I think it's in the Tanchuma. The midrash, which of course is the allegories, shall we say, stories. And there's a scene where we see a doctor going through the hospital with the nurse, clipboard in her hand, taking notes. The doctor is duly instructing the nurse, in detail what to do, this, that, and the other. This patient, give this patient this, that, and the other. And as they proceed down the row of different patients, the nurse notices that one group of patients, the doctor said, give them whatever they want. kind of a far out thing. This is in order to impress upon us that there are people that have certain dietary requirements. We're one of them. And anybody else can eat whatever they want. It's totally cool. Why waste money on kosher food after all, unless you're mandated to eat it, right? So that's part of our Parsha, and we wanted to, again, this idea of the land of Israel, 30% of the farmland is inaccessible, to the point now where Jews are getting, meals made for them abroad. Who would ever imagine? The land of Israel, land of milk and honey, literally milk and honey, with so much produce, so much excess, with so much tremendous, productivity in the land, that Jews are now getting care packages from abroad in order to eat. Another little note on what's going on in the political world, what we do spiritually, and there are consequences for what we do. And interesting how that works. Anyway, God bless everybody for a brand new week. And we're on the Sfiras HaOmer right now, the counting of the Omer till the Chag HaShavuot, until Shavuot, the time of the receiving of the Torah. There's 50 days there. And we're in the middle, coming up to Lag BaOmer, which is the 33rd day of counting of the Omer, coming up in about 10 days or so. And that is, of course, the celebrating the Tana of the Gemara, the teacher, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the author of the Zohar, the holy Kabbalistic work. And that's going to be coming up very soon. So with that in mind, everybody should have a wonderful week. And let's try our best to be aware, be open, learning, studying, saying some Psalms each day. And with that, we'll say Shavua Tov. God bless everybody. All the best.